be here again with my hi-yo. This time you have one too.
This is the stuff that Aaron Rodgers uses.
I have no idea.
If we sound high on this, it's because
that. There is no alcohol. There is no alcohol. For those folks who did not hear the first time, this is a bunch of organic adaptogens, natural nootropics, and functional botanicals to celebrate life. Hello there. Welcome to this week's Texas Bullpen Podcast. My name is Cassi Schroeder, and I am here with Brad Johnson. Our beloved roving correspondent, Jonathan Richie, is in... I've lost track of where he is.
He's roving somewhere.
Somewhere between Houston and Galveston and Dallas. He's always on the road these days. He's been covering a lot for us, actually, this week. Yeah. He was covering Mayor Whitmire's State of the City address, and he was covering a primary race in a congressional district, CD9.
He went to a couple debates. He is going to be going up to Dallas, as I will be here shortly after we record this podcast. There's a lot of travel in this week and a half stretch, and no surprise since the rubber's meeting the road on these elections on the primary. So, we'll be getting out and about, and since Richie's out, you're filling in, and welcome back.
I'm happy to be here again with my hi-yo. This time you have one too.
This is the stuff that Aaron Rodgers uses.
I have no idea.
If we sound high on this, it's because that.
There is no alcohol. There is no alcohol. For those folks who did not hear the first time, this is a bunch of organic adaptogens, natural nootropics, and functional botanicals to celebrate life.
Well, it is tasty. I'll say that, but it does not beat a glass of bourbon.
Okay, Brad. Well, this is the last podcast, I believe, before early voting.
It is.
And the March primary starts. How are you feeling? Is it just coffee, adrenaline fueling you these days?
Mostly, yeah. I mean, we did get some Gus's fried chicken this week, and you had that was your first time.
Yes.
What was your review on that?
I thought it was great. Great. Maybe I needed to go home and take a nap afterward.
Oh yeah,
but instead we came back to the office, and I do think that my favorite was that pie. What was?
Oh yeah, chess pie.
Yes.
Chess pie. It's fantastic.
Chess pie. Yes.
Yeah. It's basically a sugar pie.
That was very good. I very much enjoyed that.
So Gus's fried chicken has been fueling us this week.
Okay, right. Yes.
But yeah, it's been. I'm counting down the days. I'm ready for the primary to get here. Just first of all, for the intrigue. All this stuff's happening. We've been covering all these races, and finally, rubber's meeting the road. We're starting to see these candidates slug it out on the air. They're having to actually go negative instead of play nice, because now it's make or break time. And if you're in a spot where look like you're not going to make a runoff, you better throw everything you can at trying to make a runoff. We're seeing some other polling come out, and we'll probably talk about that a bit later. But overall, I think everyone's just ready for it to be March 3rd. Ready to know what the runoff fields look like, how many there are, and campaigns ready to just know, and staffers ready to just know if they can be done with this. Right. Campaigning is grueling. I used to do it. I hated it. It was awful. Thank God, and now I'm keeping it at arm's length. But they're just praying for 2.5 weeks left to tick away. Like you said, early voting starts on Tuesday, and we'll start to see how much enthusiasm there actually is for voters to go cast a ballot in these primaries. A lot of interesting races at stake that we've talked about and we'll continue to talk about. But it's been fascinating.
Something that I think has come up in a few different conversations this week is just how many of these races, from the top of the ticket down to these more local races, how many of them are poised to go to a runoff this cycle? What is your take on that, more or less?
Well, there's a ton of district races that are for sure going to a runoff, whether it's congressionals or state legislative. Too many to count. But statewide, I think there's like 5 that are probably for sure going to a runoff. You've got the Republican Senate election. You have both attorney general races. You've got the Republican comptroller's race. You have the Republican railroad commissioner's race, which is just insane. Can we talk about that field for a second? You've got the incumbent, Jim Wright. You've got former Tarrant County Republican Party chair, Beau French, who is a lightning rod of a human being. You have the 2024 Democratic nominee for comptroller, Catherine Colbert, who filed as a Republican this time.
Oh, I did not realize. Okay.
Yeah, it's weird. And then you've got a couple. They're not randos, but they're much lower profile people. And Hawk Dunlap, who's a longtime oil field guy, and you've got James Matlock, who actually was he challenged Christy Craddock, current railroad commissioner, in the 24 race in the primary. And so he's got baked in name ID, a little bit at least, and that showed in the University of Houston poll that came out, where it had Jim Wright, the incumbent, at 21%, and James Matlock at 20%. And then you've got Beau French at 6%. Now that was done at the end of January, but this is always a very weird race, and it just keeps getting weirder. There could be a book written about Texas Railroad Commission races. There should be, and just how freaking weird they are. But this one's shaping up to be so again. So you've got those 5. I think you've got a statewide court race. I think it's a CCA race that is probably going to go to a runoff. And then, this is a hypothetical I've been floating.
Oh.
I don't think this will happen, but we might have a 6 high-profile runoff if Jasmine Crockett and James Tallarico are so close in the margin, and then the third candidate, Ahmed Hassan, the third candidate pulls, like, let's say 2%, and those two are so tight, you could see a runoff between Tallarico and Crockett, which would be an absolute nightmare scenario for Democrats, because they don't want to spend the money on that. They want to have their nominee and then get ready for the general. But I don't think that'll happen. The odds of that are slim, but it's not zero. It's not zero. And if that happens, we are turning this runoff election up to 11. Do you get that reference? You ever seen Spinal Tap?
No, but
Okay.
I appreciate the spirit.
Yeah.
Appreciate
You need to watch
the spirit
Spinal
and the
Tap.
sentiment. Totally, totally, without a doubt.
Okay.
I really do. I
Good.
really do.
Good.
And it's fascinating to hear you talk about these races. And I know that everybody is, of course, focused or not focused. The U.S. Senate race is, of course, on both sides.
Grabbing the most attention,
Yes,
of course.
and
yeah.
then would you put the attorney general primary perhaps on both sides, or maybe more so the Republican
Certainly
side?
the Republican side, but I think the Democratic one's interesting too. And
Of
we
course.
had Joe Jaworski on the podcast. He's one of the Democrats running. We'll have Nathan Johnson on next Friday, and that'll probably go up the following Monday. And that's an interesting race. That'll probably go to a runoff based on the polling we've seen. And Jaworski, in his interview, just threw elbows at Nathan Johnson. And I hope Nathan Johnson's going to return the favor in our podcast with him. But that attorney general race across the board is fascinating. When you have an open seat like that, especially like attorney general, which has historically been such a good launching point for governor, you have really high profile names all going for it. And we've talked about the attorney general race here, but there's so much money involved, particularly with Mays Middleton, who can self-fund. The ads are everywhere. I was getting a beer with one of our friends and vendors last night at ALC, and I saw one of the Middleton ads run like 4 times in the time I was sitting there, waiting for him to show up.
It's campaign season, baby.
Oh my gosh, here we go. And there's a lot of anticipation building up. But once we start to see early vote numbers, I think that'll tell us how much interest there actually is, Because right now it's anybody's guess. But once those numbers start to come in, you'll see the actual level of interest. And I think it'll still be pretty high. I think so.
Well, when you talk to some of these campaigns, I'm not just talking here in Austin, but across the state, are they reporting back that people in their districts are excited and turned up and ready to vote? Is that something that almost always campaigns are going to try to say, especially before early voting, to try to set a narrative? Or is this actually something that's happening in terms of voter excitement? I know non-presidential year, right? But people do seem enthused, right? Over recent immigration headlines and some national events that have taken place.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly a higher level of excitement than, let's say, the 22 election. A lot of it, though, is that there's a lot more interesting races. Most of all, the U.S. Senate race on both sides, right? Now, question is, does that enthusiasm cascade down ballot to all these lower ballot races? Something that's interesting to keep in mind here is there's a lot of comparisons to the 2018 cycle for Democrats, particularly. But what was a factor then that is not now is straight ticket voting doesn't exist anymore. How does that affect things? Does it make it harder for Democrats to get people to just pull the lever all the way down, which you could do that year, which no doubt had some impact on their success down ballot in Texas House races? Now, that wasn't the only thing. They had good candidates running in a lot of these races, but I'm very curious to see how much that affects what we're currently going to see in this cycle this time.
Absolutely. And I mean, how much, in your opinion, when we're talking about this being the home stretch, candidates are trying to start making their closing pitches, internal polls? I feel like you tweeted maybe 24 internal polls.
Oh my God, so many polls.
Over the course of this
so many polls and ads. I just can't wait for it to be done.
But how much do any of these last minute endorsements, to the extent that we are seeing them, actually going to matter?
I think it depends on the race. Also depends on the endorsement. If someone can run an ad that says Donald Trump endorses me in a Republican primary, that's pretty good. That's going to go a long way. Now, I saw our friend Adam Lowy point out on Twitter, it was his lukewarm take, and it came after Ken Paxton put out his ad. And notably, Donald Trump has not he's not endorsed any candidate in that race. And I don't think he's going to. But Paxton's first TV ad, his opening salvo, which is coming just before early voting, because he doesn't have the money that John Cornyn does, the entire ad is Donald Trump saying good things about Ken Paxton. So Adam's point, and I think it's probably right, is that serves basically the same purpose as a Trump endorsement, provided that gets in front of voters. So on the flip side, though, you have John Cornyn constantly saying the same thing about how much he has voted with Trump 99% of the time or whatever. And it maybe they just cancel each other out. But I think when you have that level of a race, when you have statewide candidates that Trump has talked about, it might not matter as much. But when you get down to these congressional seats, when you get down to these state legislative seats, a Trump endorsement is the most coveted thing in Republican politics. There's not really an equivalent on the Democratic side in this state. So, I mean, maybe the biggest one is the AFL-CIO and who they back in Democratic contests. And they, if I recall correctly, they're staying out of the U.S. Senate race. They didn't back either. So that's notable. But yeah, a lot of endorsements only go so far as A, they matter to the voter that you're trying to reach, and B, you can get it to the voter. Because if you can just put out an endorsement and if it doesn't mention or if it doesn't reach anybody, then it's kind of a tree falls in the forest thing.
Right. And of course, a big part of this that we've been talking about is ads, right? And I know that you wrote a little bit about the governor's ad buying strategy.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see.
Season. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so I noticed something in looking at the ad buy from the governor, and it's shifted a little bit since then, but the general idea still exists. The gist is still there. You look at the map, and he had all these television buys around the state, except in the DFW, Houston, San Antonio, Austin triangle. all the big
Okay.
markets. Part of that is those big markets are expensive. That's also where if you look at the U.S. Senate map on the Republican side, that's where most of the money's being spent, is those markets, because that's where most of the voters are. Abbott is taking a different tact here, and he doesn't have to worry about a primary, despite what the Doc Chambers zealots say on Twitter. The guy is barely, if he can even pull above 10%, it'll be barely. I would bet on much lower. But Abbott does not really have a primary to speak of, and so he can play the long game. He can focus on November. And in talking to a couple people, what I found out is that this is deliberate, first of all, and of course it was. Nothing Abbott does is not deliberate.
Of course.
So he's working on that, or he's planting the seeds for this. But the strategy behind it is the best indicator that a voter will cast a ballot in November is if they showed up in the primary. And so he's putting all these ads in rural Texas to mobilize this basically rural wall that Republicans have relied on, get them to the polls in the primary. That way he knows he basically has their votes banked in November for the general election. It's a smart strategy, especially if you've got the money, which he does. He had, in the last report, over $100 million in the bank. He has plenty of money. He's also, by going in these smaller markets, the money that he is using, he doesn't have to use as much because it's cheaper. Now, it's cheaper because there's fewer people. But when you do the entire rural part of the state, I don't know the exact population numbers, but you can kind of match up with one of the, in terms of the number of people reached, one of the metros. And so he is trying to bank these votes for November. And the messaging he's using is, there are two ads that I understand are being circulated in this buy. One's on property taxes, and it says, well, basically, we'll lower your property taxes. We need to fix it, blah, blah, blah. Make sure to vote for Greg Abbott on March 3rd. And the second one, which is heavily being run in South Texas, but also some elsewhere too, it has three progressives in the ad. You've got Zohran Mamdani, new mayor of New York City, former Vice President Kamala Harris, and then candidate for Senate, Jasmine Crockett. Three people that have high negatives among certain voters, particularly Republican voters in the state. And it lists out some of their more progressive statements made. Like, I think it mentions the now infamous transgender surgeries for prisoners statement by Kamala that was used to such effect by Donald Trump last time around. I forget the Jasmine Crockett the quotes that it says. And then the Mamdani one is, I was elected as a Democratic Socialist and I'm going to govern as a Democratic Socialist. So he's presenting this case that these are the Democratic Party. And I am against the Democratic Party, so come vote for me. It's trying to present a case that Democrats are untenable in Texas for the voter base he's trying to reach. And so will it be effective? We'll see. But there's a clear strategy behind it. And I just found that pretty interesting.
So do you think that the strategy is more so let's make sure that our base turns out, right? Or is there a component of fear, perhaps, that a Democrat could win statewide office for the first time in, I don't know what we're up to now, 2 decades?
Over 3 decades.
Over 3 decades.
Yeah, I think.
And I just know, the reason why I'm asking that is because I know that it might have been both the Crockett and the Tallarico campaigns in the U.S. Senate race. We're putting out polling showing that they could potentially beat a Paxton type of candidate in November. Maybe it was the Tallery. Is any of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's it is a tacit message of you do not want this Democratic Party
Of course.
to win a statewide seat in Texas, because then, Texas, as the Republicans say, you lose Texas, yada, yada, yada. That's the message being, at least trying to be put across voters, and it probably plays well. There's a reason Republicans were jumping for joy when Jasmine Crockett jumped in the Senate race, because they want to run against her as the nominee, because they feel like that blunts whatever macro level factors are running against them, because they certainly are. And we talked SD9 last week, and it's not looking like a good cycle for Republicans. It's shaping up to be a bad one. The question is how bad. And Republicans feel like the ace in the hole they have here is if Jasmine Crockett is the nominee, because of the statements she has made in the past that are easy to slap on a TV ad and run in a lot of these in a lot of these areas, including and especially South Texas. So yeah, it's politics. Political messaging often goes to fear messaging, right?
Of course.
And we see that in the Republican side, where the new hottest topic is, quote, the Muslim invasion of Texas. Now, how legitimate is that as a political issue? There will be different opinions on that, but it is clearly a motivating factor for Republican voters, because you can see the campaigns respond to their internal polling that shows this is a huge motivating factor in Republican primaries. That's why so many of them are, pushing a lot of their chips onto that issue. At the very least, they realize they can't get outflanked to the right on it. That kind of thing, of course, always plays into these primaries and the general, because voter apathy is so large that you have to kind of scare people into voting, right? And at least that's the strategy that's been settled on. But also, these campaigns settle on it because it works, just like negative ads work. So there'll be a lot more of that to come.
For sure. One last question about ads.
Okay.
Can you talk more about the ad that State Representative Ken King did for his state house reelection race? Was that an ad that came out this week?
Yeah. So this one, the main one, was not actually an ad. It was a Facebook video.
Oh, Facebook video. Okay.
I think he put it on Twitter too. But there are ads that are like similarly fashioned that are running. So this is a race that really snuck up. Ken King versus John Browning up in the Panhandle, HD 88. King was not considered one of the potentially vulnerable House incumbent Republicans going into this cycle. Things changed, and my read on it is that things changed when Texans for Lawsuit Reform announced told members they were pulling out of some of these races where they were trying to take out incumbents. And if you listen to the podcast, I think we went in quite a bit of detail a couple episodes ago on this. But what that did is you have the Tim Dunn apparatus, Texans United for a Conservative Majority. You have TLR. The two groups hate each other. They're doing battle constantly. You throw in the personal injury attorney groups that are allies of convenience, generally with the Dunn crowd, both against TLR. And so the battle lines are shifting. The places where the money is flowing is shifting. And because TLR pulled out of, let's say, for example, the Mark LaHood race, Tuckham, Texans United for Conservative Majority, was spending money to protect Mark LaHood. Well, now that they no longer need to spend that money, they can move that elsewhere. So what they did, and the timing looks like it lined up in the ad buys. I'm sure they had wanted to try and take out Ken King for a while, just the circumstances had not aligned yet, but they did when this happened. So they started moving the money that would have gone to one of these incumbent protection races and moved it to go attack an incumbent in Ken King. And so you have that vacuum create the ability to pump resources into it. And you start seeing some of the Dunn groups running negative ads against Ken King. You see John Browning's campaign finally get some funding because if you look at the earlier finance reports, he had none. So the attention on this race just grew after the dynamic changed. Clear, and a lot of them were negative ads being run against King, and clearly they had an effect.
Wow.
Because King decided he couldn't just ignore it, and he needed to start pushing back against it. That's happening in some ads that are running. There's a group called Defend Rural Texas PAC that's going to the mat for him, running ads on his behalf.
Are they aligned with anyone?
More moderate rural
More
Republicans, yeah. And then King himself filmed this video that you mentioned. It's face to camera, calling the attacks lies and the accusations misleading. Whenever a candidate films a face-to-camera video like that, you know the punches against them have landed. Now, I haven't seen the numbers. He still may be above 50%, but he's at least been hit hard enough that he's no longer comfortable enough to just ignore it. So every action has an equal and opposite reaction, and this was Ken King's reaction. It reminded me of Colin Allred in 24, when Ted Cruz started running the Allred Wants Boys and Girls Sports ads, and I think another one on just general transgender issues. Well, that clearly landed, that punch landed, because Allred felt the need to not just film a video, face to camera, saying those attacks are lies, but running it as a paid ad on TV. I think the first time he ran it was during a Dallas Cowboys game. That is a surefire sign that the attacks are working and having some effect. And for Allred, it did not work out. He got walloped in the November election. We'll see what the effect is on Ken King's reelection, or at least the primary nomination. That race is heavily Republican. Whoever the Republican nominee there is will win easily in November, regardless of how bad a cycle it is for Republicans. But it is fascinating to see such a Republican chairman, and not just a Republican chairman, the chairman of State Affairs, which is a hugely important committee, and how King ran the committee in terms of legislation that got through or legislation that did not get through is being used against him in this race. So that was one race. I'm glad you brought it up, because that was one race that I did not see coming as a big one. And part of that is that in 24, Ken King was one of the Republicans who voted against the school choice proposal, the ESA negotiated omnibus package in 23. And Abbott targeted, of course, a bunch of those members, but he didn't go after King. He was one of like two members that Abbott did not go after. Now, he didn't endorse him, but he didn't fund an opponent. And so King kind of escaped a difficult primary there, and now he's finally having to face a difficult primary, I think for the first time since after the lines were redrawn in 2021. So that's definitely a race to watch. There's a few others. I mentioned Armin Mazzani and Fred Tate.
Right. Where's that, Flower Mound or Fort Worth?
Tarrant County.
And what are just in terms of who we've spoken to involved with that race, is that one that
is a tort reform proxy fight.
A tort reform proxy fight that's heading to a runoff?
No. Well,
okay.
actually, I don't think it will.
Okay.
But there is a third candidate in that race who was kicked off the ballot by the local party. But then I think a court ruling went against them. So she is, Z Wilcox is her name. She is on the ballot. So you could see a runoff there. Other places to watch, I think we talked about the Terry Leo Wilson and Nathan Watkins race down in Galveston. You've got Stan Kitzman against Dennis Giesman in HD 85. They're not really the hood race anymore, although still a lot of money's being spent. A lot of it moved to these open seats, although Leo Wilson's not an open seat. And then now King. So more than enough to keep us busy, but still not quite the crazy cycle that was 2024.
But we still have, let's see, we're in February, 9 months, 8 months.
Oh, gosh.
8 months to go till the general. So a lot can happen between now and then.
It's a long way to go, and it's a good thing we like this stuff. It's a good thing we're political sickos. Yeah.
Okay, so let's step out of campaign world, which
Okay.
I know can sometimes be a little bit of a challenge to do.
Yeah, for me, probably. Yeah.
But there was some big news this week related to Colony Ridge.
Yep.
A pretty controversial development outside of Houston. And it was the Attorney General, Ken Paxton, who of course is a U.S. Senate candidate, but his office and the DOJ announced that they had filed a joint settlement
with Colony Ridge. Yep. So there was a settlement that came out. Richie had a good piece on it. You should go check that out on the website.
Very good.
He knows I know the basic outlines of it, but he knows it a lot better than I do. But yeah, this had been a long time coming. And first, I'll start off the lawsuit was Colony Ridge became an issue after a Daily Wire report about this massive settlement in Liberty County, inhabited primarily by illegal immigrants. And the numbers are not clear exactly what proportion of people that live there are illegal. A large portion. And I don't know if we'll ever know exactly what the number is. But back then, the development was like 50,000 people, which is a lot, especially for a rural ex-urban county. The biggest problems, at least at the time when I went and toured the place, that a sheriff's deputy relayed to me was the stress on infrastructure and services there, whether it's schools, whether it's law enforcement, the roads, flooding problems. You had a lot of logistical type issues with 50,000 people dropped into an ex-urban county that's not very wealthy, that can't handle it, right? But then you got the political angle to it. And political, by political, I mean the illegal immigration side. And there are a ton of illegal immigrants there. So the Daily Wire ran a piece. It became this big national issue. Republicans in the state started getting blown up on it, not just by local radio hosts or activists, but by, I think, Tucker Carlson. I think he still had the show back then, maybe not. Fox News hosts.
The governor.
The governor started getting attacked by it, right? By national media. And so it's been a thing ever since. A lot of different wrinkles to it. And it's still a political issue. It's still being talked about. But fast forward to this week, a settlement was reached. The lawsuit was by, I believe, the DOJ filed it against Colony Ridge, and then Texas joined on, or maybe there were two separate suits. Regardless, Colony Ridge was accused of improper messaging, basically faulty consumerism. I'm blanking on the exact technical words, but misleading people and consumers about the terms of buying property there. And a lot of that was, a lot of these people are Spanish speakers or Spanish-only speakers too. And the way allegedly Colony Ridge was marketing their plots of land did not line up with the parameters that they were actually setting up in contracts, and so they were accused basically of predatory lending. Fast forward a few years, and we now have a settlement. I think it was $50-60 million they got to pay. I think the biggest aspect of this was not really the money, but the 3-year moratorium on new plats being created by the development. This thing's not going away, and just because there's a settlement doesn't mean the problem is solved, whatever the problem is. But Republicans, and particularly Ken Paxton in his political campaign, can now thump their chests about having addressed this issue to some degree, and we'll for sure see it played out in these primaries to some degree or another. But from the Colony Ridge perspective, they're probably very glad to just have this, at least formally, behind them, move on and adjust business-wise. And they've denied the allegations. They were fighting it in court, but ultimately they decided it was better to just settle. So I would check out Richie's longer article on it. Apparently, and I haven't been able to read it yet, but there were some, and jump in here if you know, but there are some disagreements between the federal government and the state of Texas in the case itself, even though they ultimately got a settlement that they were looking for.
Yeah. You're right. I just pulled up one of the Daily Bulls from this week. Looks like Paxton was just really highlighting the fact that this was a major way to address illegal immigrants living in this community, that Texas is not going to be a sanctuary for these types of folks.
Using all the buzzwords. Yeah.
All the buzzwords. And then the Assistant Attorney General for the DOJ, for the DOJ's Civil Rights Division, only made a passing reference to illegal immigration.
Interesting.
So
a difference in tone.
Right, very different tone, more so focused on the predatory lending aspect, vulnerable borrowers with the American
Because that
dream
was
of
the
home.
basis. This was not really an illegal immigration lawsuit.
Right.
This was a predatory lending lawsuit that was tied to illegal immigration.
Right.
So that makes sense.
Right, and it looks like, the settlement amount that Colony Ridge is going to need to pay, $68 million, is for new infrastructure and law enforcement upgrades.
Which they need.
I know that crime was
a problem, but when I talked to the deputy back then, maybe it's changed since then, but he was saying, the crime problem, the cartel activity, really isn't much different than proportion-wise than in nearby Houston.
That's a good point.
However, that doesn't mean it's not a problem, right? And for this tiny county, tiny population-wise, the services have been stretched very thin, and DPS was having to go in and supplement the local sheriff because he didn't have the manpower to police the area very effectively. And so they've been there. I think they're still there. Maybe they scaled back some, but they were there, and DPS was in a large number, helping patrol the area. So this is, that's an example of the more rudimentary type problems of 50,000 people being dropped into an urban county. The political stuff will play a lot, and that's the stuff that'll get accentuated the most. But another one is the flooding. There's a guy named Bob Rehack in Houston that's covered this flooding problem a lot, and because it's kind of a haphazard development, it's not planned very well, and so you run into infrastructural problems like that, and stuff floods, and you're kind of SOL if it does until you make the necessary renovations.
Okay, last thing that I wanted to ask you about before we let our Texas Bullpen listeners continue on with their Saturday, which is also Valentine's Day.
Oh. Where's Spencer taking you for Valentine's Day?
You know what? I tried to get a reservation 2 weeks ago. Couldn't find one. So we are just going to probably cook at home after the kids go to bed. What about
Nothing
you,
wrong
Brad?
with No updates.
No
on
updates?
that. No.
All right.
I will be enjoying my day off though.
Right. In
Yeah.
Dallas.
Well, I'll be heading back from Dallas, so
Heading back
that's
from
not that
Dallas.
enjoyable.
Okay. But maybe you can listen to the podcast on your way back. Maybe you
Maybe
already
I'll
listened.
listen to myself talk and blather.
Yes,
Yeah, that's a
maybe.
great time
Maybe
always.
just a good way to pass some time. Okay, the last thing that I want to ask you about, I'm going to call this a piece of head scratching news. It definitely
Okay.
made me scratch my head. El Paso,
Yeah.
FAA,
That was weird.
10-day flight ban, can't come in, can't come out. Is that what the FAA originally announced?
Yes.
This week?
It only lasted like 3 hours.
3 hours,
but
right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, and we saw there were theories about Mexican, well, not even theories. We had statements from some of these officials, right? One official told us, told reporters, I should say, not us, that there was Mexican cartel activity.
Yeah. There was a lot of.
There were so many. I saw
Yeah.
five, six different
Yeah.
statements flowing around.
As soon as it happened, there were like rumors of us invading Mexico or bombing
right.
Cuba.
Yes, right.
The
saw
more
an
likely
aliens one.
aliens.
I saw an aliens,
Yep.
aliens theory out there.
That would have been bad. We don't want that.
What's your personal theory? Or wait, did they actually confirm what happened? Do we have
I don't think they
confirmation?
have exactly. I think we
Right.
have conflicting accounts. Someone
Conflicting
said
accounts.
there were cartel-operated drones that entered U.S. airspace, and so they just went into red alert, basically, and shut down the airport.
Okay.
I was talking with Jim Henson on his podcast yesterday. So if you want to hear me blather more, go listen to the Second Reading podcast put on by the University of Texas and their Texas Politics Project. I think he mentioned he had seen that morning that morning being Thursday morning, that there was our military was testing a laser weapon.
I did see that.
And
right. Yeah.
there's still confusion about whose drones they were. Not a lot of communication going on, clearly. So I don't know. I don't know what
Nobody
this
knows.
was, but it was alarming to wake up to and see, and it was everything anyone was talking about that morning. So, the 10-day flight ban below 18,000 feet above or at or above the El Paso International Airport was instituted. Eventually, it was removed entirely. And so I think the biggest question is, what was it that caused them not to just go a 1 or 2 day ban?
10 days.
10 days. That seems a bit extreme to me, and that's the thing that raises my flag more than anything else.
I thought you were going to say your alien antennas or something.
Yeah, that too. Alien antennas. I don't know. What do you think? What's your theory?
I have no idea. That's why I asked you. I mean,
We cover Texas politics, not aliens.
I'm going to end there. I'm going to end there on that exact sentence because I think it's a good one to end on.
Okay.
Heading into the weekend.
What
Unless you have any final thoughts.
No, other than nothing, useful. But the Olympics are going on, and the American hockey teams are kicking butt and taking names so far. So I'm excited to watch that. Hopefully we get another matchup against Canada and we can beat the hell out of the Canucks.
When's this happening?
What?
The game.
Well, there's a bunch of
I know, but the
games.
Oh,
against Canada?
yes.
We don't know yet. We don't know if it's going to happen.
Oh, okay.
It won't happen until the knockout round after the round robin they're doing. But the American men just beat Latvia. Insert Latvian joke here. 5-1. And then the women are just killing everybody. So dang good hockey teams. And if you're a northerner like me, you love me some hockey. But there's a ton of other Winter Olympic sports going on. Bobsledding, of course, the luge, skeleton, all of the frozen slide sports. Fun. I like the Winter Olympics. Do you watch? You're not a sports person, are you? Not even the Olympics?
I do occasionally tune
Okay.
in. I do occasionally tune in. I am an American after all, so watching the Olympics is fun. Fun. Yes.
You're right. You're right as a red-blooded American.
Yes.
Okay.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think so. But I'm going to go get some more Gus's fried chicken probably.
You should do that.
This
It's
weekend.
fantastic. And anyone else listening, if you have a chance to go get Gus's and you haven't, do it. It's fantastic. Make sure you get the actual fried chicken, not the tenders like Cassi
The tenders are amazing. The tenders are amazing.
That's not the
Tenders
purpose.
are
It's not the
amazing.
purpose.
The tenders are amazing. Thank you so much to everyone for following along this week. It's been another great week in the books, and we're excited to see what next week brings.
Well, it'll bring early vote returns, so we'll have at least something to talk about then.
I'm excited.
Hey, that makes two of us. Maybe the only two. All right, we'll catch you next week, everybody. Thanks for listening.